Stephen was born, but ultimately, it was for nothing. Stephen was slain. And by the end of it, there were no survivors at all. Except, if you look around, you would still see a few kids running amok. A young child went up to him and asked him his name. He said his name was Stephen Jr. 8 years after the bombs have fallen, we can find Stephen ruling over a prosperous and peaceful kingdom. Full of grass, it's full of life, everything seems to be perfect. To a large degree it was. Stephen was ruling over a kingdom called the Sheltered Empire, and it was called that for a reason. First off, because it was prosperous. Secondly, because it was safe from any outside harm. And third, because it truly was sheltered. Outside the kingdom, in its walls, lay a disastrous and ugly hellscape that covered all of the world. And in this hellscape, demons ran amok all over the place. Inside of another castle, one that mimicked Stephen Jr.'s own kingdom, lay a single demon, Poncho. Poncho was an almighty, powerful god of hell, some might say. He had many traits and was nearly impossible to defeat. And next to Poncho lay a monolith, but this was not your average evolving monolith. This monolith was the key to hell continuing to exist in the overworld. After the death of Stephen, so many years ago, one of the bombs was able to penetrate a mountain so deeply and so perfectly that it opened a pit from hell itself and allowed it to spread all over the world. And while Stephen Jr. was just barely recovering the initial nuke attack, once he saw hell emerging from a mountain and spreading all across the landscape, he knew he had to act quickly. He and any surviving members from the explosion he could find quickly worked to build this wall and secure his society. Anyone who was left outside of the walls either perished from the original explosion, the radiation, or finally the demons. As for Stephen Jr. himself, of course he was happy about the amount of people he was able to save. However, he felt guilty and responsible for those who perished, even though it really wasn't his fault. Nevertheless, Stephen Jr. realized what he had to do. He somehow had to go over to Poncho and take him out, finally close the pit to hell once and for all, so that the world could be peaceful once again. But Stephen couldn't do it alone. He began to look for the 4 best warriors that he could find to go on the journey with him, finally take down Poncho once and for all. After hours of searching, Stephen Jr. finally gathered his posse. First was a giant named Kurt, who was strong and huge. Next was an older lady named Alun, who was ready to put her life on the line because of her boosted vitality. Next was a much younger man named H-Knight, who appeared very normal, but he had goals beyond even Stephen's wildest dreams. And lastly was a confident and attractive older lady named Redman, who was a sharpshooter and would help lead the posse's way through the wave of demons. Now, if we look at our group's equipment right now, not necessarily the best, but in this area, they really only had very limited resources, so they had to work with what they got. Our group was eventually equipped with some of the finest armor that they had to offer. Kurt was equipped with a full set of iron armor and an adamantium sword, as he would be the big guy to lead the brunt of the charge. Next was Alun, who they were able to get a full set of bronze armor along with a powerful bronze hammer. H-Knight was equipped with a full set of steel armor and a powerful steel axe. Redman was equipped with only copper armor, but she was the sharpshooter, so she was given an adamantium bow, as she planned on staying back and therefore didn't need as much armor. Lastly, with Stephen Jr., they were able to scrounge only the best equipment for him, as he had a full set of adamantium armor and a very powerful, legendary adamantium axe. Our group was ready to begin to travel into Hellish Landscape. They released the doors. Our heroes began charging into the battle and were almost halfway to the gates of the demon castle. Out of nowhere, Stephen appeared and caught H-Knight off guard, killing him quickly. Stephen Jr. was able to quickly dispose of the demon, but not before the very first member of their posse fell. Despite their mission, the remaining 4 posse members took a short break to hold a funeral for the fallen H-Knight, and realized that they must continue on and achieve the mission at all costs. Once our heroes reached the gate, they had to deal with a few demons, which they were able to dispose of quite quickly. However, they still needed to open the gate, and there was only one way to do that. They had to take down the gatekeeper, who suddenly appeared himself right in front of it. The demon appeared and said that her name was Leon, which was a weird name for a female demon, but our heroes didn't judge, as it is 2025, and seeing that she was all alone, they quickly charged in to deal. However, this was all part of the demon's plan. She got 2 of the members of the posse alone, where she would quickly be able to deal with them. Kurt was the first to fall, and then she went after Breadman. Steven Jr. tried to intervene, but couldn't quite, at least not before the man was also slain. But still, Steven Jr. had slain the gatekeeper, which led to the reveal and opening of the gate into the demon kingdom. Once our heroes moved in, they were ambushed by a couple of demons, which they were able to barely take care of, and Alun was down to just 4 HP. Steven Jr. told her to just go back to the kingdom, and that he could handle this by himself. Alun refused, saying that she would not quit until Poncho was slain. When our heroes approached the gate, they were expecting to have to fight another gatekeeper, but instead, it just opened up, inviting them in. Steven Jr. and Alun walked in, and we found one demon, a single demon, inside a vastly empty room with a monolith at the back. They asked its name, said its name was Poncho, the evil demon that they had come to slay, wielding only a flame sword. But Poncho explained that it wasn't just any flame sword, it was Steven's flame sword. Poncho continued to explain that when Steven had slain that demon so many years ago and took his flame sword, it was Poncho's father's sword. Steven Jr. had no clue. Steven Jr. didn't even know that his father owned a flame sword at any point, but was very shocked at this realization and apologized and had asked, "Is this really the reason you had taken over the entire overworld? Because your father's sword was lost?" Poncho said, "Yeah, that's pretty much why. Yeah, that's about why." And the two were about to duel. But remember, Alun was still here. Alun still had a great chance to prove herself to her father and be all that she had ever wanted to be and make him proud forever and ever, and she was dead. Poncho had killed her with a grenade. As Steven charged in, he felt an impotent rage take over his body. He became powered up, stronger. He had a shield, and most of all, he harnessed the power of the gods and his dad to give him super health. He powered up, and he began his fight. Poncho was strong. Their fight was legendary, but Steven, despite all that he had done to power himself up and strengthen himself, it seemed he was losing. The fight continued for many years. Many had thought that Steven and his posse had just died, had disappeared forever, and slowly over time, they began to forget about him. But eventually, Steven began losing health, and it was clear that at some point, he was going to lose this fight as Poncho remained continuously strong. Steven wasn't quite sure what to do. He continued to try to harness his power, but ultimately, it would be for nothing. Steven fell back. He ran away. He saw a break, finally got in a position where he could leave. He could walk out the door and run away. He was much faster than the demon was. He could make it back home. He could be safe. But he realized, is this really what his friends would have wanted? Is this really what his dad would have wanted? No. He realized what he must do. He had to take on the monolith. But trying to destroy the monolith without killing Poncho first meant certain death. Steven realized this. He didn't care. Steven ran around the demon, quickly, moved into position, began attacking the monolith. All that he had. After attacking the monolith for several seconds, he finally got a striking blow, crippling the monolith forever. Nothing happened at first. Steven and the demon were confused. In the time that they had off, Poncho quickly killed Steven Jr., eliminating him from this world forever. But Poncho was confused. What now? The world seemed to be okay. Everything was fine until the bombs began falling. Across the world, explosions rang out around where Poncho was, around where the hellscape was. Poncho was almost immediately slain, gone forever. Yet, as the debris and the smoke cleared, it was evident that the sheltered empire was okay. Rubble began to clear, water rushed in, the hellscape began to retreat, the pass fell, and over time, the world began to heal itself. And just a few years later, the world began to glow green once again. No more trace of hell, no more trace of the nukes were to be seen. The sheltered empire, for the first time in a long time, opened their doors, letting people into the outside. It didn't take long for new villages to be created. It was at peace. And as the city folk realized that Steven did not abandon them, but saved them, they made a monument. 4 corners to commemorate posse members lost, and 1 cross in the middle with the summit on top to commemorate Steven Jr., the hero that they did not deserve, but the hero that they needed.